So I want to come back to where I ended in my last lecture about the centrality of the Book of Common Prayer in our worship life together, and remind you of a couple of important passages in the Constitution and Canons of the Episcopal Church. First of all, in the Constitution itself, in Article 10, the entirety of Article 10 is devoted to the Book of Common Prayer and its importance in our life. And the opening of that article is this: "The Book of Common Prayer, as now established or hereafter amended by the authority of this Church, shall be in use in all the dioceses of this Church. No alteration thereof or addition thereto shall be made unless the same shall be first proposed in one regular meeting of the General Convention, and by a resolve thereof be sent within 6 months to the Secretary of the Convention of every diocese, to be made known to the Diocesan Convention at its next meeting, and to be adopted by the General Convention at its next succeeding regular meeting by a majority of all bishops, excluding retired bishops not present, of the whole number of bishops entitled to vote in the House of Bishops, and by a vote by orders in the House of Deputies." So we can't do without the Book of Common Prayer, and it is the prerogative of the General Convention to make changes to the Book of Common Prayer, or to issue those services for trial use within the churches. But the Book of Common Prayer is, according to the Constitution of our Church, who we are. It is the book by which our worship life is to be guided. Having said that, I thought I would also draw your attention to a very important aspect with respect to the conduct of worship in the Episcopal Church, and that is found in the canons of the Church following the Constitution, Title 14, Section 1, which deals with the clergy and their duties. And so the canons say this about the clergy: "The authority of and responsibility for the conduct of worship and the spiritual jurisdiction of the parish are vested in the rector, subject to the rubrics of the Book of Common Prayer, the Constitution and Canons of the Church, and the pastoral direction of the bishop." So within any given parish, the rector is the one who has responsibility and control over the worship life of that parish, and that authority is grounded in the Constitution and Canons of the Episcopal Church. Having said that, I've asked you to begin some discussion this week among each other about how decisions with respect to worship are made in your parish. So while the rector must have that supervisory capacity for worship in a parish to see that it conforms to the Constitution and canons, the rector can, and one might say should, seek the input from others who are invested in the worship life of the parish, whether that be the music director, or whether it be a worship committee that the rector calls together, which is his or her own prerogative. And what I thought you might consider in your conversations with each other this week is the extent to which your rector seeks that sort of counsel and advice from the music staff in your church and from lay people. And I wanted to convene that kind of conversation to touch base with the important point that Louis Weil continues to make in his work that we've been reading this quarter, and that is that liturgy is the work of the people, that lay people have important contributions to make to the worship life of the church in their work as acolytes and as servers, in their work as choir members and church musicians, in their work of bringing expertise and good reflection to bear on the choices and the many alternatives that the Book of Common Prayer and the hymnal and the supplements to the hymnal, as well as the trial services that have been approved by the General Convention, can offer to a very rich worship experience within the Episcopal Church. But also I wanted to stress the fact that if lay people are to be involved in these sorts of discussions with the rector, who has the final authority for supervising the worship life in the parish, if lay people are to be involved in that, training is necessary. There are abundant resources for how to make better use of the hymnal, for how to make the most of the alternative possibilities that are available in the prayer book, how to understand its rubrics, not simply the Hatchett commentary which you have, but a whole host of resources that are available for use that should not be withheld from lay people. Lay people should not think of these as something that are just within the purview of the ordained. Rather, they are resources that are available to the whole church, that can be not only used by leadership in the church to enrich the worship life of a parish, but indeed knowledge of those resources by all lay people for whatever reason, as a part of their ongoing education for what it means to be a thoughtful, worshiping Episcopalian. Those sorts of resources ought to be available to them, and they ought to receive instruction on how to make the best use of those resources. That's the kind of discussion I want to kick off in our work this coming week.